Alright, tubers, this is kind of a video response to Southern Prepper 1. He's talking about this book, Going Home. Written by a guy named Angry American. Nobody knows who it really is. He probably don't want it known anyway. I want to cover a couple of things. I've read a few of the other books. Those are by Max Velocity. Bill Forstner, Bruce Hemming, David Crawford. All of these books have to deal with an EMP strike and what you do. Yes, my little boy. What you would do, how life would be if there's an EMP event. And what they're really talking about is what would happen to America if we lost grid power. That's what the problem is. Not why, it's what. Well, this guy here, Angry American here, he wrote this book. It details a guy, kind of a geek type guy, a closet prepper, whatever. His name is Morgan, and he's driving out on the job. He's 250 miles from home, right outside Tallahassee, and EMP strike or whatever. His truck quits, and he's going to hoof it 250 miles to the house. Now, as unlikely as that premise is, it's really not. It's a great book. It's just some of the stuff, when you read through here, you wonder what the guy's thinking. But that's all right. I mean, one of the other things, this guy here, Angry American, he's not a professional author. He's not born and bred, not Ivy School. I've heard complaints. Oh, there's too much rough language in here. I can't let my kids read it. I got news for you. Your kids have heard a lot worse than what's in this book. Unless they've been raised by monks on the side of a mountain somewhere. But the book's actually written by a guy, just a regular guy, a guy like us. And the stuff he comes up with, the situations he develops, it could happen. Me personally, I wouldn't do it, or at least not the way he did. But I wanted to kind of go through here. I've made a few notes here on the book to answer some of the comments over on Southern Prepper 1's. Like I said, this guy is not, the writing is satisfactory. Yes, there's grammar errors. Yes, there's spelling errors. And no, he did not get an A in Yale English class, okay? But I want to cover a few things that are in this book I think are not realistic. So if you, and some things that are great. He mentions in here radio DFing. Direction finding using RF signals. It can be done. Sorry about that. But not to the extent, I don't think, unless capabilities have changed since I got out of the military, not to the extent that he shows in his book. A 1 second transmission will not bring down hellfire and damnation on you unless they are looking for you specifically. Okay. There's a couple other references in here about a broadcast on all high freak. In this case, Department of Homeland Security broadcasts messages on all high frequencies. Okay, for ham radio guys. No, that's not going to happen. All right, that's impossible. Another thing that Angry American does in here, he lists very specific gear. If you like his gear, and this guy does, that's great. I really don't have any preference over brand names of gear, but this guy does. The person Morgan, who the story is developed about, made it a great deal of thought for preparation in some areas and absolutely none for others. If you're the type of person that's gone to the lengths that this person has gone through, now this is a novel, okay, but this character Morgan, if you've gone through the things that he's gone through, there's other things he could have done been a lot easier. He was right outside Tallahassee when this EMP event occurred and his truck lost power. Now, first of all, right off the bat, why didn't he have the components he needed to put his truck back in service? It's not that tough. There's not too much to go wrong with a gasoline-powered engine that you can't keep a spare computer and a spare distributor in an EMP-proof container and restore your vehicle to function and just drive home. The second thing is, if you're not going to be able to drive home for some other reason, then go get a bicycle. He's right outside Tallahassee. Just go out with a pair of bolt cutters and get him a bicycle and ride 250 miles. You could do that in a couple, 3 days. I mean, instead of, 2.5 weeks or 3 months or whatever this thing took. The last thing I would do personally, I'm a pilot, so the last thing I would do is hoof 250 miles. I'd hoof it to the nearest airport, and I'd pay somebody, or I'd steal an airplane. I'm a mechanic. I'd just steal an airplane. I'd be home in an hour. So that's the way I would work it. I mean, if it was me. But that would make for a very good book, I don't suppose. The other thing that comes up, if you're really concerned about EMP, I'm kind of trying to go down this list here. If you're really concerned about EMP and your car frying, which is not at all certain that that's going to happen, get a vehicle that's immune to it. There are a whole bunch of vehicles that could care less. I've got several vehicles outside that don't need any electrical at all. They're Volkswagen diesels, and you can take every piece of wire off them, push them down the hill, start them up, and they'll take you where you got to go. They don't need any electricity of any kind, so an EMP has no effect on them whatsoever. The early Ford diesels, I'm talking about prior to 80 something, 85 and earlier. A lot of the Chevy diesels prior to 91 and earlier, they don't need them. They don't care. So if that bugs you, get you a diesel. Don't worry about it. There's good character development in here. It actually has a great outcome, which some of these other books I read over here, some of these books are just, they'll drive you crazy. But this guy wrote a pretty good story, did pretty well as far as developing the characters. And like I said, grammar and spelling, which doesn't bother me much, Let's see what else we got here. Ham radio. Ham radio. Anybody who would call themselves a prepper and does not have a ham radio license and ham radio equipment is kidding themselves. And I know I'm going against the grain. There's some guys here on YouTube, big shot guys. Yankee prepper for one. He owns the equipment, says he doesn't want the license. Well, I got news for you. You can buy a surfboard and they don't make you a surfer. You can buy a gun, doesn't make you a shooter. You can buy all this equipment and it doesn't make you tactically proficient. Okay? Just because you own a ham radio does not make you capable of using it. There's a lot more to it than just turning it on and keying the mic. And if you don't do it every day, or you don't do it enough to get proficient at it, it's like everything else. It's not going to be useful when you have to have it. And the second thing is you have to protect the ham radio equipment against EMP. What's the purpose of having ham radio equipment if you're a prepper and you're going to let it burn up in an EMP or lightning? Lightning operates in a similar manner. So, yeah, ham radio is the deal, man. See here, rough language, DFing, ham radio, name brand, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to give you the whole story. Otherwise you wouldn't buy the guy's book. It's a good story. It's got a lot of good information in it. Some of it it's not me. I wouldn't do it the way he did, but that's fine. That's what makes an interesting story. That's what makes his story a little different from all these guys over here. So, and checked downstairs in the library, and there's 6 more down there. So, I need to do these book reviews as soon as I get done with these books, or else I kind of forget. I start reading the next one. I've already done that. I started reading one of these other ones by Max Velocity over here, and I've kind of had to go back and browse through this book to get current again to tell you what was going on. But anyhow, it's worth the money. I could recommend it. I don't know what Southern Prepper thinks about it after he finished it, but there's good points in here. I think it's worth having. So anyway, with that, I'm going to close this down, and then I'll do another book review on one of the other books. All right, this is Ozark Patriot, and I'm out.